Hello, and welcome back, everyone. This is just another day in the life as a military wife. With the end of the year approaching, with the holidays and everything, it had me thinking about what are some things that we can do to make our life better. Things that we have control in our life, and things that we don't. Even when they do have control over we can I'm going to talk to you about today why we should, as always, all right, so there is two parts to what I want to discuss with you guys today. And the first part of this discussion is going to be the health impacts of non-forgiveness or holding a grudge, whatever you want to label it as, or versus forgiveness. So, surprisingly enough, not everyone may realize this, but there are real and hard facts on how not forgiving, holding a grudge, persisting in anger can and does impact your health and one of the studies that I found lots of studies, but one of the studies in particular was a 2001 study from Holland, and it showed that people who were unforgiving, it affected their nerves and muscles and your face, and increased your heart rate and your blood pressure over time. And then Everett L. Worthington Jr., PhD from the University of Virginia, I believe. Anyway, he's a professor in this. He studies forgiveness and stuff in the United States. He was sorting resources. He said that researchers found that forgiveness releases stress, non-forgiving increases stress, and also cortisol. Cortisol is a chemical that our body produces. It is connected with your fight or flight response, but it also is something your body releases when you're stressed. And high cortisol over time, especially in women, leads to worse memory as well as less gray matter in your brain scans. Now, gray matter is important in regards to the way your brain, it allows your brain to process information. High cortisol will also damage your immune system over time and your digestive system. And just if you stop and think about all of those things, like that's significant. If it'll higher stress, not forgiving, can impact your nervous system. This is not even just talking about your emotional and mental well-being. This is just physical stuff for the most part. It is going to affect your heart. And prolonged stress and elevated heart rates does damage to your heart, which can increase the chances of heart attack and stuff like that. High blood pressure, which can also increase your chances of heart issues. High cortisol, like the whole memory loss and not being able to process information, so your inability to think critically, will be impacted. Like digestive system. I know that increased stress can increase your heartburn. Like it can increase stomach acid, which is affecting your digestive system. Increased stomach acid can lead to acid reflux, and acid reflux these are all cans. It's not saying if you don't forgive people, you're going to end up with this, but this is all possibilities. Increased acid in your stomach and digestive system can lead to acid reflux. Prolonged acid reflux can lead to throat cancer, and throat cancer is one of those cancers that is rather deadly. Most cancers can be deadly. In fact, they all can be deadly. But I'm just saying, like, this is not something little. This is a very big factor in regards to our health. And that's not even getting into our mental health. That's not even getting into our interpersonal relationships and how holding on to that anger and those feelings can affect the way we view the world, the way we build and maintain relationships, how close we feel it to people, our ability to trust others, our ability to form new relationships. It impacts a lot of our life, but it does physically take a toll on us as well. There's a fabulous book that I've been reading and I've read and I've talked to you guys about before, and I'd recommend anybody who is interested in learning about these sorts of things, basically how your body is affected by social and emotional situations, and that the body keeps score. It is a fabulous book. It really goes into detail about the toll that is taken in our body for a lot of these things. And just in these research studies, it also mentions how our immune systems are impacted. And our immune system affects so much of the quality of life on a day-to-day basis. If we have a weakened immune system, you're more likely to get serious illnesses or even frequent minor illnesses. It affects your ability to be out and about in public, and it'll impact your overall health. And we know that people with weaker immune systems, when exposed to severe illnesses, have a higher chances of catching it and for it being detrimental and possibly even fatal. So not only like just in this short space of time, in just a few of these instances physiologically that I've discussed, a few of them over enough period of time, over prolonged periods of time, can quite potentially lead to early death, premature death. And I don't think anybody wants that. I don't anything anyone really wants to be miserable. I don't think anyone I that's my personal philosophy. It's hard for me to believe that there are people who out there who genuinely want to die young and miserable and unhealthy. I don't think that that is a default state of the human experience. Maybe there are individuals in that category. I hope not. And I hope if they are, they're able to understand that life doesn't have to be that way and find help. But this is just how things are. And in military life, especially, but in all life, especially, and in our world today, there are so many instances where you can feel hurt or attacked or angry or threatened. And we need to be able to deal with those emotions and deal with those situations and forgive the people who've caused that damage in our lives or that harm or whatnot. And that means we can forgive someone without letting them harm us again. So, boundaries and forgiveness, I feel, go hand in hand. If you want to truly be able to forgive someone and heal physically, emotionally, spiritually, you need to also be able to set healthy boundaries so that you're not putting yourself into a situation to be harmed again. And that is something I have talked about in previous episodes, and I'm going to try to link those in the description below. There's another fabulous book that I have talked about in the past about setting boundaries. And that book is Boundaries by John Townsend and Henry Cloud. I've spoken about it before, talked to you guys about it on the channel. Try to link that again in the description. And I'll link the both of these books is where you can get them if you're interested in the description as well, because having resources is important. But basically, the importance of letting those things go, of forgiving and taking that time to step back and analyze where you're at and how you got there and what you can do about it. And in regards to all of that, there is this study again that there this article by Professor Worthington that I mentioned before. He talks about how there are two approaches to forgiveness. These two approaches are decisional forgiveness and emotional forgiveness. And when he talks about decisional forgiveness, what he's meaning is that we realize we need to forgive. We're not emotionally in that place yet where we're still feeling hurt, we're still upset, it's still impacting us emotionally, but we know that forgiving is going to be beneficial to us. And so we make the choice to move towards forgiveness. And emotional forgiveness is when over time, the hurt, the pain caused by whatever the issue was has faded. The emotions have faded or been put into context or been addressed to the point where we are able to then more easily forgive. And I feel personally, just my personal perspective, that a lot of people feel like they have to feel better, that they have to, the emotional forgiveness is the only way to go, that emotional forgiveness is the key. And yes, in some cases, time can heal wounds. Emotional forgiveness can be the approach you end up taking, but that's not always going to be the case. There are going to be times where you have to decide to forgive. And it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to forgive someone when they approach you and they're contrite and they say, I'm sorry. I wouldn't want to make this right. I was wrong. How can I fix this? They acknowledge what they did. It's really easy, or no, maybe not really easy, but I personally feel like it is easier to then want to forgive those people. But there are going to be many times in our lives where individuals do not recognize they have harmed us or do not feel like they have harmed us, and or that they feel they are justified to harm us. And those are very distinct things. There are times where people are going to, like, for example, cut us off on the road, and that will be frustrating, and we can continue to be angry with that person and have it ruin our day, or we can let it go, and they'll never know. They may never know how they affected us. Um, then there are times where people know they affected us in a negative manner and don't feel like that was a bad thing. They don't really care. Um, and then there are times where they know that they impacted us negatively, but they feel like they were right and we were wrong. And so they have no intentions. Like I said, I summarized and then I re-explained every single one of those three categories. Maybe you got it the first time, but in case you didn't, those things happen in our lives. There are going to be situations in which people don't for ask for forgiveness. They don't show any level of contrition. And there's a phrase, I think my mom said it to me, some church leader said it to me. I think I may have even mentioned it on this podcast in the past about forgiveness. But holding on to a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It's not going to work. It doesn't make sense. When we hold on to those toxic feelings and we allow the damage to be done to our body by holding on to that anger and stress and lack of forgiveness and those resentments, we do physical harm to not only our souls and our emotions and our mental health, but to our physical bodies. And so, learning how to choose to let that go is huge. And being able to feel safe is part of being able to let things go. I've had experiences in my life with individuals who hurt me rather deeply. And it has taken years to forgive them. And sometimes the best thing I can do is choose to work towards forgiving them. And that's not even choosing to forgive them, it's just choosing to point myself in that direction to start off with. Choosing to consider to forgive them is the very first step. And choosing to pursue the desire to forgive them. And now for me personally, because I'm a religious person, that means turning to God and asking for God's help to have the desire to forgive them. And that can take a lot of different steps. That can take a lot of different methods. But like I said, for me, setting boundaries is a huge thing. There are individuals who I cannot remove from my life. So I have to set up ways of interacting with them so that I feel safe and I know that I am not going to be taken advantage of or mistreated again. Then there are individuals who are just not healthy to be around. And sometimes the best thing you can do is just let them go. Let them go from your life. And that is not always easy, especially with friendships. It can be very hard. Uh, on the other hand, sometimes as a military spouse, military individuals, it can be kind of easy if you get to move. And I know this is going to sound probably a little surprising, but I look at moving so often in the military as a gift in this aspect because it allows me to analyze relationships that I have with the people around me and determine which relationships are beneficial to my health and well being and are healthy relationships. And I can choose to maintain those, and which relationships are not healthy and are harmful to me and my life, and I can choose to let those go. And not every relationship that is let go is because of that reason. Some it is just because our interests diverge, our lives diverge, and we just don't have that much in common. We were supporters of each other in that place and time, but there is not a real bond or kinship to keep going. And so there's a lot of reasons why you may pursue letting a relationship move on and not be continued in your life. But definitely, moving has been a huge blessing for me in that regard. If you do not have that benefit of being able to pick up and move away from people, you can change your habits or your interaction patterns if there is someone you need to remove from you and your environment. So there are ways of going about this. I there's just not enough time. I feel like there's so many good books about forgiveness and the importance of forgiveness, and there's not time in this episode to go into a step-by-step how to forgive. Partly because how you forgive is going to be different every time in every situation, and the methods in which we do it are going to vary from person to person in which is most effective. But there are those two concepts. There is going to be situations in which time has healed that wound and you are able to then let it go. And then there will be times where you will have to consciously make that decision. And what I'd love to encourage you to do at the end of the year, with things wrapping up, with us moving on and moving forward in a new year, is to analyze your life and to think about what are some things that you can choose to let go? What are some things that you can forgive to help yourself be happier and healthier in the year to come? So, that is where I'm going to leave things off for today's episode. I am hoping that you take that challenge so that you can have a happier and healthier year, and that your plans for the holidays are merry and bright, and that you are surrounding yourself with positive relationships and people who love and support you, whether or not you're wherever